Can everybody there hear me? I'm going to assume yes. We practiced this a little earlier, but all right. So good morning, all of you guys. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Jackie, and I have the absolute pleasure of getting to tell the kids' story here at Agape every Sunday. So the last couple of weeks, we have been talking about a guy named Joseph, and how he was his dad's favorite. His brothers didn't like that, so they sold him into slavery, and then he gained favor with one of the Pharaoh's captains and somehow ended up in jail from there. But, and this is a big but, things do start to turn around for him. So we are going to be looking at Genesis chapter 41 today, and it's called Pharaoh's Dreams. And Pharaoh was the guy in charge of Egypt. He was the king of Egypt, really an important guy. And he had a couple of dreams. The first dream he had, he was standing on the riverbank of the Nile River, and 7 cows came out of the water. They were enjoying, healthy, living their best life. But 7 more cows who looked really sick, really lean, really thin, showed up and actually ate the 7 healthy cows. And this kind of freaked Pharaoh out. So he woke up and was like, oh, it was just a dream, not a big deal. But he fell back asleep, right? Fell back asleep and had a second dream. And this dream had to do with wheat. There were 7 stalks of wheat, healthy, formed together in the middle of this field. And Pharaoh was looking out on them, and it was great. But then 7 unhealthy stalks of wheat sprouted from the ground and took over the 7 healthy stalks. And so this really freaked Pharaoh out. So he woke up and he was really, really thinking about them the next day. And so he called all of the dream tellers, all of the magicians, all of the people who he thought would be able to tell him what his dreams meant. He called them all to his castle, his palace, and said, can any of you tell me what this means? And one of his officers, he was the chief cupbearer, is what he was called, looked at Pharaoh and said, there's this young Hebrew guy in the jail, actually, and the other day when we were thrown in there and you were upset with us, we each had a dream and about what was to come, and this young Hebrew guy was able to tell us what the dream meant, and it came true. Each of our dreams came true. And so this Hebrew kid was Joseph, right? And so the Pharaoh sent out for Joseph to come and tell him what his dream meant. And so Pharaoh starts telling Joseph about these dreams, he says. And Joseph goes, well, I can't do it, but with the help of God speaking through me, I'll be able to. And so the Pharaoh goes, okay, let me tell you about my dreams. So he starts with the cow dream. He said, in my dream, I was standing on the bank of the Nile. And out of nowhere, these 7 cows showed up. They're healthy, best we've ever seen in Egypt, incredible. But then 7 more cows come out of the water, and they're the worst I've ever seen. I've never seen anything like these in the entire state of Egypt, right? And so he goes on and tells him about the ugly cows and how they ate the healthy cows. And then he woke up. And he tells him about the second dream too with the wheat. He says, there were 7 stalks of healthy wheat, and then out of nowhere, 7 sprouts of unhealthy wheat came and devoured and took over the healthy. And what does it mean? Can you tell me what this means? And Joseph actually looks at Pharaoh and says, the dreams you had are just telling you the same thing. It's just 2 different ways of telling you the same thing. And the Pharaoh kind of looked at Joseph and was like, what are you talking about? Are you sure you know what you're talking about? And he said, the 7 good cows represent 7 years, right? He says 7 good years, healthy years of harvest and crop, 7 great years of abundance. And the 7 unhealthy years are represented by the unhealthy cows, right? And so they come and they take over the 7 healthy years, and we don't see them anymore. People don't remember the abundance and the prophet of Egypt, right? And so that's what the 7 years of weak, sick cows represent, right? And so the Pharaoh says, okay, but why did I have two dreams that said the same thing? That doesn't really make sense. And so so Joseph tells Pharaoh, he says, well, you had two of the same dream because God wanted to make sure you knew that it was already set in place, that this plan was happening. And so the 7 years of famine that follow the 7 healthy years are going to be devastating. People aren't going to remember how great Egypt was in the years prior because of how bad it's going to be. And so Pharaoh looked really concerned, which he should have been, because that's a big deal. That's a big deal. 7 years of famine, which if you don't know what a famine is, it just means you have a shortage of food, right? There's not enough food to feed everybody who needs it, usually. And so Pharaoh decided that he was going to appoint commissioners to take over different areas of land. And as they were reaping in all of these great crops during the 7 healthy years, they were going to store them for when they needed them for the 7 unhealthy years, for the 7 years of famine. And so Pharaoh kept these foods in the cities and they were under his control. And he decided that he needed somebody like Joseph in charge of some of these areas. And so Pharaoh asked one of his advisors, he says, do you know of anybody like this guy in Egypt that we can use to put in this position? And his officer goes, no, I think that Joseph's it. Joseph's the only one we've got. And so the Pharaoh decides to appoint Joseph to this position of power, and to this position of being in charge of one of these areas of food, which is a big deal that we will get into next week, because everybody loves a good cliffhanger. Am I right? Am I right? No? Okay. Well, that is all that I have for you today. So I just wanted to remind you guys about Kids Night on Wednesday. It's going to be at 7 o'clock Central Time, right here on Zoom. So if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to either me or Pastor Florin, and we would love to get you set up. Bye, guys.